So there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to a pattern. It
Hmm.
could be a daily pattern. It could be a weekly pattern. It could be, a communication pattern. It could be a relationship pattern, health pattern, money pattern. It could be, it could be anywhere, behavioral pattern. And so when you start with the beginning, that's again where it comes in and it sneaks in. You don't see it coming. So you're beginning, and then you go through this whole sequence of events in the middle. And that's usually where we get kind of twisted and turned up into the pattern. That's where a lot of emotions come up. That's where a lot of stuff comes up that kind of can do a number on us when it's an
Mhm.
unhealthy pattern. And then you get to the end. And usually at the end, there is a form of relief. Okay, so we get relief from all the turmoil that happened in the middle of the pattern, and we get some relief. So if you think of it that way, it helps you to kind of identify where does it begin and where does it end? Because when we're in a pattern, sometimes we can't determine where the beginning and end is because it's so constant. Welcome to the Let's Be Real podcast, genuine conversations for authentic living. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Lisa Allshafer, empowerment life coach and author.
And I'm Sondra Pariser, health and wellness entrepreneur, truth seeker, and truth speaker.
And today's episode is about discovering what your patterns are here to teach you through the Pearl method.
And then how to get through them. And boy, as we were talking about this podcast, I was thinking to myself, I have broken so many patterns just simply by identifying them over, really the last year and a half. But I think the kicker is how. I'm so excited for us to do the how to identify, because they're tricky little bastards.
They are. And we're such creatures of habit. So when you start to really get good at analyzing your patterns, it changes. Well, you say this a lot. It's a game changer. It's the name of the game. That's what you say. It's the name of the game. But it's a game changer because you start to see your patterns in a different way. And back in, I've been doing this for so many years, but back in 2018, I structured what I call the Pearl method. And I called it the Pearl method because you gain wisdom, pearls of wisdom, when you actually take it through this Pearl method structure. And so we're going to go through that. But ultimately, it's, this repetition that we experience. So a lot of people can see their patterns, but they just don't know how to break the pattern. And some people actually don't see the pattern. This is something that I experience a lot in coaching because what I do, I just pick up patterns very quickly, my own, but it's hardest to see our own actually than it is to see other people's, right? But ultimately I can just start to see, and there's just something that just clicks when I hear, oh, heard that. I've heard that twice now. I've heard that 3 times now. And then that's when I start to, put it together to help them to see their patterns, because oftentimes we just don't see it within ourselves, which is why coaching and having somebody outside of ourselves in some way, friend, therapist, whatever it is so beneficial to be able to see our own stuff because we're just, too close to the subject.
Yep. And before we go any further, please hit the like, subscribe, and if your heart compels, to share this information with other people before we get started. We'd appreciate that. And then coming back to identifying the patterns, which is such a tricky, I call them they're sneaky little bastards for a reason,
Yeah.
because in our last podcast, we were talking about, kind of 3 different components to consciousness. Patterns are one of those sneaky kind of shadow components of ourself that we've also talked about in the past. And so really getting to the root of it, no matter how again, you're in the human experience, these patterns will show up.
Yeah.
And then you never know, you might be creating some even right now in this moment, because again, it's the human experience. And so patterns are something that we repeat over and over again that really aren't serving us. So I'm really excited to see what we're going to get into today.
Yeah. Well, we can have positive patterns too, like routines and things like that serve us. So we want to actually replace the self-sabotaging patterns with healthy patterns,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're creatures of habit. So it's not like not having patterns. It's just having healthy patterns. So I want you to imagine, for those who aren't watching, but are actually listening, because we're on different podcasts, right? Spotify and Apple and all that. So I want you to picture in your mind a pyramid. And that pyramid is segmented into 5 segments. And so at the top segment is the P, which is the pattern. So pattern identification. What's at the top of the pyramid is what we see. And then what's kind of down at the bottom is kind of more hidden for us. And I'll explain that in a second. But so pattern identification, it's where I have people actually go through and write down the sequence of events that occurs as they're going through the pattern. So there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to a pattern. It
Hmm.
could be a daily pattern. It could be a weekly pattern. It could be, a communication pattern. It could be a relationship pattern, health pattern, money pattern. It could be, it could be anywhere, behavioral pattern. And so when you start with the beginning, that's again where it comes in and it sneaks in. You don't see it coming. So you're beginning, and then you go through this whole sequence of events in the middle. And that's usually where we get kind of twisted and turned up into the pattern. That's where a lot of emotions come up. That's where a lot of stuff comes up that kind of can do a number on us when it's an unhealthy pattern. And then you get to the end. And usually at the end, there is a form of relief. Okay, so we get relief from all the turmoil that happened in the middle of the pattern, and we get some relief. So if you think of it that way, it helps you to kind of identify where does it begin and where does it end? Because when we're in a pattern, sometimes we can't determine where the beginning and end is because it's so constant.
Oh,
So
I've got so many
yeah,
patterns.
yeah,
You can use me as an example. I'm like, I remember, okay, because keep going because I know that this is going to come up, but the the middle part, which is like, just
yeah,
imagine all these knots. Here's A, here's B, and
yeah.
all the pattern stuff is in the middle. And when the pattern ends, is there's a relief, but that doesn't mean it is a pretty relief.
No, it's just relief from all the turmoil you experienced in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So here's,
We're going to go there, but anyway, as you were talking about, like, yeah.
well, let me give an example so
Okay.
we can exemplify this. So a lot of people take things personally. So this is the taking things personally pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Step one is where someone says something or does something that you don't like. Step two is you feel angry or hurt and take it personally. Step three is instead of addressing it, you keep it to yourself. Step four is you keep thinking about it as you grow resentful. Step five is they do or say something else you don't like, which you take personally again. Now, this isn't, a concrete. This is a
I'm
generalized
like,
pattern. Okay.
I have this situation happening right now. So keep
Okay.
going and we'll use me as
Yeah.
a real life example.
Good. So that, well, not good, but yes. Six is you start to build a case against whoever this is as you file away those experiences in your mind.
Mhm.
So we're now building a case. We have this little filing cabinet. We have one for probably each person in our life. Oh, there's another thing I need that I'm upset about or I'm taking personally or whatnot. And you file it away. And then step seven,
Or we can also call that not filing it away, but keeping score.
keeping score is another way to say it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Coming off a tennis match today for you, right?
Yeah, right.
You got
Yeah.
a little sun today, so you're all nice and flush.
I know it's beautiful outside. I
Yeah.
can't even believe it. So anyway,
Yeah.
I didn't wear sunblock. So anyway.
Yeah. So step seven is you continue to build a case until it's solid enough that they won't be able to deny that they're wrong. And then the last part of the pattern is when you come out and you let them have it. And the entire case that you've been building up against them, now you feel the relief by venting it all over this person who most likely doesn't even see it coming. Okay, so the relief is the venting.
Yep.
The pattern in the middle is you're building a case, you're getting resentful, you're taking things personally, and you're just not in a good space. And then when you have enough, then you vent it out. You get some temporary relief. Of course, it's temporary relief, and
Uh-huh.
nothing ever gets resolved. And then you can start it immediately after that. You can start it from that conversation, or you start it again the next day. Oh, they weren't listening to me. Here's my case. I'm going to add it on to what I already had, and then I'll bring these extra pieces in next time. So common.
It's, I think, so you can use me as an example. So I'm going to leave everybody nameless in this
Yep.
experience that I'm in. And I've obviously grown as a person because I know that relief part that you're talking about that comes flooding out on the other person. I've at least done enough work where I know two things. So someone did or said something to me that elicited a response in me. Now, this was a few months ago. And I really have been trying to like not let it get to me, because part of me thinks this is in my head. This isn't in reality. This person probably has no idea that she hurt my feelings in the first place.
Right.
She really probably has no idea. So as I'm experiencing the emotions of this, I'm trying not to build a case. However, I am human.
Yes.
So I am really trying to operate from the premise that she really doesn't know that something had happened. And so that relief that, you know what, you got a problem with me? Come talk to me about it. Why are you talking to all these other people about it? Now, I've also grown. This is just as much as in business as in life. And my mantra, even with my kids, is life is a drama. Do not effing add to it by assuming that someone's saying this or doing that or talking behind your back. Now, because I'm highly intuitive and kind of psychic, I can feel it. Now, because I've done a lot of work and I'm intuitive and I'm a psychic, I'm trying to handle this from the highest and best good of all involved, because the truth is there's jealousy underneath that. And
For her or for you?
for her.
Okay.
And there's some jealousy underneath that. And as I look at people in my outside realm, you know, my husband and I have a pretty amazing life, and we have really amazing kids, and we're physically fit, and we really love each other. And like, I can't tell you how sad it is for me to see other people in their relationships. And just being that I have a 9 and 11-year-old, our friends are people with small children. And I would say the majority of people in my world are unhappily married. I'll just put it that way. So there's a pattern. I'm trying to break it because I know that I'm going to have to just let it go. So in this scenario, my dearest of all friends on planet Earth, Lisa, how do you do that when you know? Now, I know she's not exactly talking to a lot of people, but it's a thing. So I'm not making it up.
Okay.
What do you do?
Well, we're going to get to what you do because we're just giving an example of that. But and that can lead us into the next step. So the PEARL, right?
Perfect.
Yeah. But I want to ask you before we do that, have you had this happen with other people?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's now it's not a one-off, it's a pattern.
It is a pattern. Yeah.
So you've got other people that have either are jealous or they're envious or whatever you want to, you know, of you, and then start talking to other people about you,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
And it ultimately gets back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's keep that in mind, right?
Oh,
Keep
that's
that
a
in
big,
mind.
that's a big pattern.
Yeah.
Not just once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. It's a thing.
Yeah. So now let's go into the next part of the Pearl method, which is the emotions that are fueling the pattern. Okay. So obviously when we're in the turmoil and we're in all that, we're got all sorts of emotions going on.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's just recognizing that the emotions, which is so much of what we talk about, is an important part of dismantling any pattern. So emotional intelligence, knowing what the emotions are, how to process the emotions and that, and so forth. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the emotion, not that comes up for her or other people, but
For
what's
me.
the emotion that comes up for you when you're in this pattern?
Why doesn't she want to be my friend?
So is it hurt? That's a
Yeah.
thought. It's
Yeah.
hurt. Okay.
Yeah.
So you feel hurt.
Yeah.
Right.
I
All
have
right.
feelings. They hurt.
Yeah. Okay. So now we know that we've kind of got the sequence of events. The
Mm-hmm.
emotion is hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever feel a little angry around it?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
we got anger and hurt. Often
Yeah.
anger.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
What the heck, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I was
So
going to say a
nobody.
different, I had a way more colorful word, just
Yes.
throwing it out
Yeah. We're
there.
keeping it PG-13, right?
There you go.
Yeah. So the um, I lost my train of thought there. I had
Feeling.
it. No, I know that, but there was some other train of thought I had. Anyway, I'll move on. So yeah, so we have anger and we have hurt. And then we go to the A. So we have PE, so pattern emotion.
Mm-hmm.
The A out of the pearl is awareness of the pattern and its impact on your life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is where we move. This is where it changes because we normally just stay in the pattern loop with all the emotion and it's just an automatic thing.
Right.
So we want to break out of the automatic. And what brings us out of automatic is awareness.
Right.
Okay. Self-awareness. Because if we look at the pattern, even if it involves other people, we're still the common denominator. So we need to look at what's going on within ourselves, and in this case, within you, that keeps this pattern going. Because you can't change other people, right?
Right.
So, but it's your reflection. Is that right? It's part of that. So the awareness is where we turn things around and we get off automatic and we move into awareness and into real mindfulness and awareness around what's going on. Then we move to the R. So we have PEAR, and that is the resistance that is powering up the emotions. We talk a lot about resistance, but
Mm-hmm.
resistance in how I'm talking about it is the resistance to the emotions that are coming up as a result of the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you're feeling angry, there could be a need to tell her off, the need to make her wrong or whoever it is, right? It could be the
Oh,
need
I'll tell
to,
you what the need is. You want me to tell
okay,
you what the
sure,
need is?
sure. Yeah.
Right sizer. I have this need to put her in her place.
Okay. So the need to put her in her place.
Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
need.
And that's probably driven by the anger, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then you said it earlier, the need to be liked is what's connected to the hurt.
Yep.
So when you feel hurt, you just have a need to be liked.
Right.
But when you're angry, you have a need to put whoever in their place.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay. So when that happens, so when you have the need to put her in her place, what happens to the anger? It gets bigger.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Totally.
powering up the anger.
Oh,
Right.
totally.
And when you're in the need to be liked, you're powering up the hurt.
So I have to tell you, so over the weekend, I've really been trying to, kind of tear back the onion a little bit because I know how to do this. And I know enough to know it's mine. Like, it's mine to process.
Yeah.
And I think this is just this one scenario. And this is just something that it's something that has been coming up, just different people. And
Go the fireworks.
boom, buddy. That's so fun. It's something that's been coming up, and I with this just happens to be this one person, but I think the reason this is such a hurt point for me is that it's so many people. It's bringing up not just this one situation, but so many other situations. And so that's where I know that I don't want to relief on this one person because it's not this one person. It's this stagnant of so many people over time.
Right.
So yeah, so like I don't have a whole lot of friends. I really don't. I wish I did. I don't. I have very few very good friends. I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
But my yellow is wondering why.
Yeah. And so your yellow is the color code. That's the personality type that you are. and they're the most social of all the personalities. And
Oh my gosh.
their driving core motive is fun.
Wait a second. Wait a second. I'm connecting dots for everybody to see. And I almost broke down and started crying because my need to be liked. Oh, my poor little daughter, Aurora. No wonder this is really upsetting me over the weekend. Poor little Aurora calls me from school on Friday. It was Friday around 11:45 in the morning. I was somewhere in the middle of a meeting, and I get a call because when the school calls, it's like, oh, what happened? And she's on the phone and she says, Mommy, remember what happened to Stacy Meow with Winston? And I said, I don't understand what is happening right now, because it was her on the phone. It wasn't the nurse calling or the teacher calling, right? It was actually Aurora calling. And she's whispering. And I said, what do you mean? What happened with Winston? You mean like the bullying? And she's like, yes. And I said, yes, of course. She says, it's happening to me. Can you make it stop? And I said, who? And she whispers, Taylor. And I was like, that's it. That little shit is on my shit list, right? So this is a little girl who, from the beginning of the semester, no matter how hard poor little Aurora tries to get her to like her, it's one day she's over the moon, Aurora, and everything's great. And the next minute she comes home and she's super sad and she won't talk to her and she's left out. And they've got all these, and this again been going on this whole, well, from the beginning of last semester. So I said to her, I said, okay, mommy's going to take care of it. It's enough. I got on the phone with the teacher, explained the scenario. The teacher's well aware of this one little girl who just seems to be, it's a whole story. She's going through, her parents are going through a divorce, it's all the things. So I've been really gentle with trying to give Aurora different suggestions on how to, kind of elevate from this situation. No wonder I am triggered.
Yeah.
It's because of Aurora. I'm just these kids, I love her. I'm really happy I just made that connection. Why am I so upset about something because it happened to her?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Because you know what it feels like when people are unkind and all those things to you.
Yes.
Yes.
How about that?
Good.
Wow. See, and by doing this just now is how the awareness is how you break the pattern.
Yeah.
Wow. And it came through Aurora. How about that?
Beautiful. Yes.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
See, I'm really happy I didn't rip somebody's head off and put them in their place.
Yeah. Because that would just
made everybody.
It would have led to a consequence that would have been even more painful. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one thing that's important as you're breaking out these steps, that there's consequences to everything that we choose. Even though it might not feel like a choice at times, but we're always choosing. And that's the power of choice. I think we did one on the power of choice at some point, a podcast. But ultimately, every choice we make leads to somewhere. It's either going to be more positive or it's going to be more negative. And so this is that awareness that brings us to that place of, if I do this, then this will happen, for the most part, right? We know it's not going to end up in a good place if we rip somebody's head off. That doesn't mean we don't stand up for ourselves or perhaps have a conversation. But ripping somebody's head off is much different than that. And then, of course, if you're not sharing, what it is that you're feeling, or you're not resolving it, then what happens is then the turmoil continues to grow and grow inside. And then, you're just stuck. You're looping around. And then the mind is probably having all sorts of conversations with this other person, which is probably what's happening with Aurora. She's probably having all her conversations with this person, that you mentioned. And so, we get so stuck in our head that, and of course, as we're thinking the thoughts and the emotions are rising up to meet the thoughts, and we're just stuck. And then the resistance, the need to be liked, the need to, rip somebody's head off or whatever it is, the need to make them pay the, whatever
Mhm.
you said earlier. I can't remember exactly, but um, that is where we are
The need to
now.
put them in their place.
Yes, the need to put them
Mhm.
in their place. Thank you. And so that's where this turmoil just continues to grow and grow and grow.
Mhm.
Now, how long that, we sit in that depends on the person, depends on the pattern, depends on all sorts of variables, right? It could be an hour, it could be, a month. So, but ultimately, what we want to get to is the L in the Pearl method. So we have pattern, emotion, awareness, resistance, and L is for lesson. What is the lesson that is encoded in this pattern? Because
Mhm.
that's what our patterns are really here for. Is our patterns are here to teach us some lesson, a life lesson, right? Something about ourselves, something about how we interact with the world, our relationship. Sometimes it's a money pattern, so it's our relationship with money. What's it reflecting back to me? What am I to be learning about myself? But it's always about ourselves. Let's learn about ourselves because
Mhm.
there are patterns, right? But it can be ourselves and how we interact with other people or other environments or whatever it might be. So, but ultimately, if we don't learn what the pattern is here to teach us, we just keep repeating the pattern. It'll just
Mhm.
keep coming back around. And that's why this is so vitally important to break through, because as you identify all these pieces, the emotions, the resistance, right, the sequence of events, but ultimately the lesson, which is why it's at the bottom of the pyramid, right? It's at the bottom because it's the most important piece, because this is the piece that will actually, you need to get through that piece in order to break through the pattern, and that's the lesson.
And when you break through the pattern, you have no idea the freedom. And as soon as we go through these bullet points, I'll share with everybody the pattern that just popped up for me a couple weeks ago. But they're threaded and they're deep. And oftentimes, I mean, this whole situation that happened with this friend of mine, um, again, it's happened so many times. Like, so it was an easy, because I don't know who, everybody out there has feelings, and we all want to be loved. We all want to be heard. We all want to be understood. And that's kind of some of our core fundamental human needs. And so everybody can relate to this, what I, and then I'm like, it's Aurora. But then you have, and look at that, like that came through the situation that may not have even phased me because I understood what it was. um Really, and it's been a weekend. It's been a weekend. Another example of how this pattern, until understood, is almost screaming at me, right? So this happens on Friday. This weekend was, okay, here's what happened in the weekend. I went to take the 2021 Escalade. So it's a new Escalade to get, I guess essentially it's a smog, but it's an inspection in Texas. It's a brand new car. Why wouldn't it pass inspection? I take it to the first place and I'm running short on all the time because I've got way too much on my calendar, even though I have nothing, like I'm not supposed to have anything on my calendar. And I didn't have my insurance card. It expired in December and they wouldn't take it without. And I'm just sitting there going, but I actually just got to the inspection front line and I don't have time. So this is after the Aurora. Okay. So that was Friday and it just didn't stop. The whole weekend, busy, 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 busy. And then all this weird, just, ugh, culminating yesterday. I have to find an inspection place that's open on a Sunday. And I have to drive to this inspection place. Again, pretty horrifically busy weekend. So I get the car on time to the inspection. Oh my gosh, I've grown so much. You're really going to love this. So I have really tinted windows. I don't know about you in Vegas, but need tint on your windows because when the summer sun comes in, same thing in Texas, it is hot. So all my windows are tinted, and my passenger window is, or my driver window is just as tinted as the rest of the car. And so the guy calls me over. Now I'm already there. I give my insurance card. Everything's ready. He's got it on the thing to do the inspection, and he calls me, oh, ma'am. And I said, oh, hi, are you in the Escalade? Yeah, okay, I'm in this. So I get to the car, and he's got this clip on the driver's side window. And he says, there's no way that this can pass inspection. There's no way. The tint is it's too dark. You could get arrested and go to jail. I said, young man, what if I give you $20? Can you pass me? No, ma'am. And I realized, and I'm now that anger, that's the anger, right? I'm going to put this person in their place. And this is growth, but this again is my whole weekend was like this. So I realize he's autistic. And I was like, whoa, Sondra, slow your roll. So I get in the car and I said, young man, I said, I promise you this much. If I get pulled over, and I've gotten pulled over before, I promise you they're not going to take me to jail. I don't know where all this fear came from, but it's not true. And he looks at me, the look in his eyes was like so confused. Like somebody scared the pants out of him about this whole tinted window thing, right? So I caught it. And I'm driving home because, of course, I didn't get my inspection again. So I'm driving home and I'm like, universe, what's up? Like, where's the lesson? Where's the L? What's the lesson? And really, then it's so that's how some of these patterns. Remember that messy part in the middle when you get into the thick of it, that's the mess.
Yep.
And the relief was for everybody just to witness when I connected the aurora to the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So interestingly enough, on our next podcast, remind me to tell you, did I get the real relief comes in identifying the lesson? Does that make sense?
That's the change of the whole trajectory of the pattern. That's the breaking through of the pattern. Yeah.
Right. But the mess in the middle is all of it.
Yeah. So I jotted down some notes. If you saw me looking down,
Yes, I did.
Down some notes because I wanted you to proceed forward with your story, but I didn't want to lose the thoughts. Yeah. Well, I've got I guess I'm in coach mode because now I'm all sorts of stuff is coming in. But I think what's interesting, I'm just jotting this down. So let's go a little bit to the yellow personality. And you're a yellow personality. I'm a blue personality. And we process and communicate differently. Okay, information. Mm-hmm. So you are a direct communicator. I am a processing communicator. So even for those who watch us on a regular basis, I process, which means I think like there's I'm doing it right now. I look up, I'm accessing information, I'm putting it together, and boom, it comes out. But there's a process. It's a quick process, but at the same time, there's a process that occurs before I speak. It's just the way I am. It's just how it is.
Is that the blue?
And it's definitely the blue and the white personalities are processors. So sometimes it can be slow processing also. Some people take long to process because mm-hmm. they just need to gather themselves more and more in their mind. And so the red personalities and the yellow personalities are much more direct communicators. So as you're talking about this young man at the place, right?
Poor guy.
What came to me, because you're a direct processor, and as is Alan, to think before you speak. So put a little more processing time in there, mm-hmm. even though you're not a processor, but that would kind of, you would grow from that process mm-hmm. to catch it before it comes out that mouth and land on somebody, right? Mm-hmm. But that but that's not your natural way of being. Just like being super quick isn't my natural way of being.
Right.
But I don't also want to be really slow either on the response. And sometimes it's right there. But I also want to have that nice blend in how I communicate so that I'm not too caught up in the processing, but then you're not too caught up in the direct
Mm-hmm.
without a little bit of thinking before it comes out. And that's what you did. You took a breath and you took a step back, because we're going to have all sorts of, personality types, that
Yeah.
are listening right now. So you'll probably know if you're a direct communicator or if you're a processing communicator. So I think that's part of the lesson for you in what you're describing in this experience
Hmm.
is give a little bit of time to think before I put it out into the world, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But not to the point of unnatural, but just a little bit more of awareness before that comes out. The other thing, these are the things I jotted down. So the other thing is, because you have, well, it could be with Aurora and it can be with you because you're experiencing similar experiences, is that you're looking at how other people are treating you, and Aurora's looking at how other people are treating her. So you want to look at the law of reflection and ask yourself, is how I'm treating myself and how she's treating herself, is it in the kindest, most empathetic way? Is it with understanding? Is it with love? Are you hearing yourself? Is she hearing herself? Or do we get caught up in all sorts of other stuff going on? Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's neat to, and I don't know what podcast we did, but we talked about this, to sit back and go, oh no, maybe it was in the parenting course, to look at your progress.
Yeah.
And that poor little boy, I mean, I don't want to say little boy, I mean, he was like 23, but if you could be my son, I'm going to call you young man. How about that? To see it, and go, oh dear, okay, whoa, Sondra, that's not my intention. And I can already see this person, this young man, is dealing with some serious fear. Sorry, I got a wasp in my house. And I don't want to add to that. And that was, and I'm not going to bite somebody's head off because I know I've grown enough to know, ooh, that's not the relief, that the consequences from that relief is just, I don't want to add to it. So, and instead, like so many things, really, I'm trying to focus on, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's mine to feel, I'm going to have to be the one to experience that feeling to the point of processing and then understanding and then shifting the lesson.
Mhm.
So it's mine. All of it's mine, no matter how I feel or who makes me upset about whatever. It's not them. It's never them. It's just an opportunity that presents itself for growth.
Yeah. And because when we have patterns that include other people, this is a really key piece to look at,
Mm-hmm.
because the relationships in our life, now this is not somebody you had a relationship with, but you have enough people in your outside world that things have happened with that have caused a pattern, more about the first person you mentioned. And so when we have those repeating kind of experiences with other people, they become that reflection, that law of reflection, where, okay, the outer relationships, the significant relationships that we have with people, especially if they're repeating, is a reflection of the relationship we have with ourselves. So I used to have a much unhealthier relationship with myself, just as you did.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is
Mm-hmm.
so much of what the work is about, is creating a healthier relationship with yourself.
Yourself, the inner standing.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then the healthier relationship you have with yourself, the healthier relationships are on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is part of, now we're looking at the lessons here. Right. And so now it's looking at, if we're looking for love and being heard and understanding from someone outside of ourselves, it's looking at, well, how well am I understanding what's happening right now in this moment? Or how well am I hearing something going on within me? How loving am I to myself? Or am I on this kind of this inner rampage to go outside of myself to make things right? Which again, this is human stuff. This is like
Everybody's
this is
going to do it.
not to be judged, none of
Yeah.
that. It's just
Yeah.
awareness and understanding and being able to see through all
Mhm.
the emotional turmoil and all the thoughts that can go on when we got all the stuff going on,
Mhm.
and recognize that. So when I was harder on myself, and I was really hard on myself for most of my life, I too had people who would talk about me and and so forth. And I had a strong need to be liked and a strong need for approval and a strong need for all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was, and I had a lot of anger back then too, which we've talked about. So but I, now it's like I don't really have that going on. But I do know if someone upsets me and I have a more intense reaction to it, it's it's sorry, I have a notification going up.
You know
Distraction.
what? Mine pinged too, so at least it
I've
was
been
yours this time.
heavy pinging today, so sorry about that. Anyway, so it's looking at, yes, well, if I have intense emotion that comes up today, I know it's my stuff, regardless of what anybody else might have done or said that upset me, because of the intensity of the emotion, that this is old stuff. It's old stuff, because how I'm feeling right now is not even equivalent to what I at least think is happening with this person, right? It just doesn't happen very often. But when it happens, it's usually, oh, this is pulling up another old piece.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
even going into your 30-day walk,
Yeah.
um, because I was there for this whole experience that I can say, I mean, I watched you through it. There were um situations that were put in your space
Yeah.
for you to go, why is this person who's so long ago like
Yeah.
in my sphere,
Right.
and because there was a handful of situations that happened
Yeah.
that this person presented again,
Yeah.
and then you did your 30-day walk, and it's like, oh,
Right.
aha, like old pattern.
And even though it doesn't feel good, in fact, it's very uncomfortable and can be very painful, but at the same time, that's the information. It's feedback to let me know, to let someone know
Hmm.
that, oh, you've got some stuff that was kind of hidden in there that
Hmm.
you didn't know was still there.
Yeah.
And we're deep. We are deep beings. And there's all sorts of places for this stuff to hide out in our subconscious.
Ugh.
All sorts of little pockets, right? That can make that
Ugh.
this trapped emotion can hide in. And we want to make sure that when it comes up, that we recognize what's actually happening. So we
Mhm.
don't go to the direct boom and letting somebody have it, that we're
Mhm.
actually saying, wow, this is really upsetting me. I need to look at me. Why
Mhm.
am I allowing this to upset me so much? What is it that I feel right now? So we're going to the emotion, right?
Mhm.
And then what is my need that's influencing this emotion, which is the resistance? And no one likes to be thought of negatively. Nobody wants to be talked about negatively,
Nobody.
right? Nobody does.
Nobody.
Nobody likes that. And then, but yet this is another thing that can happen. One pattern can overlap with another pattern. And this taking things personally pattern could also overlap with a withholding pattern, which is a
Mhm.
communication pattern. So if you're a withholder, which is going to be probably more of the processors than the direct people, but it can happen either way, where we're not speaking up when we're upset, and we hold on to it, and it grows and it grows and grows into resentment, which is what I was talking about in the pattern of building a case. So by the time we talk about it, we've got ourselves in such a tizzy that we're going in to make the other person wrong. We're not even going in to resolve anything. We're going in just to let them have it, put them in their place, right? We're just,
Mhm.
because we can't hold it anymore.
Mhm.
So if you're a withholder out there listening, then this is a whole nother pattern, which
Oh
is very,
yeah.
very connected to the taking things personally pattern. And I was a strong, strong withholder. So my lesson was to communicate more. and communicate when it was uncomfortable and let go of my needs that were connected into the pattern. And as a result of that is where I found so much of my power. Because
Mm,
here's the thing, when you learn the lesson, there's something waiting for you on the other side that's
mm.
really positive. It will strengthen you. It will help you to grow. Um, it will change your life, especially if it's an old pattern.
I just want to touch on that really quick because I used to think, um, I used to have a negative thought on power, right? Until I really started to experience freedom and freedom from the emotions that had bound me up from life. And now that I've experienced that freedom,
Yeah.
it opens, it's when you close one door, when you really heal something and it's healed, or you identify a pattern, and instead of the relief being, I'm just going to slam it at this person, instead of that,
Right.
you do something different. Like, oh, this young man is clearly on the spectrum. And I know I have many, 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 many wonderful people around me who are on the spectrum. You don't tear their eyeballs out. So, they are in this cute young man was doing his job
Mhm.
to a T, exactly how they told him to do it. We ain't gonna tear that kid apart. Like, so,
Right.
and those, and then that is, kind of next level, layering it out, so that this pattern, all the craziness in between. And I was acutely aware. I'm like, really? I can't get my vehicle inspected. And it'll be interesting to see how this week kind of unravels as far as the pattern goes. But I take the Escalade into the shop this morning. This is why I needed to get the stupid. Okay. So I take it into the shop this morning. I have to wait 40 minutes because they're overwhelmingly busy, totally backed up. I have an appointment, right? And I just sat there and I'm like, this is universal humor. Um, and then the young man kept coming to my door and saying, I'm so sorry and we're so busy. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what? If there's somebody that is really coming at you right now, like, you can put me to the back of the line. I'm totally fine. Take care of, because it was so busy. And I'm like, this kid's in the weeds. Um, and then of course I have a loaner scheduled and everything like that. I don't have my wallet. I don't have my driver's license. I had to Uber home.
This is perfect for the next pattern I'm going to talk about.
Perfect. Keep going.
Disorganization pattern.
I'm like, why? Twice to the inspection, no
But,
inspection.
but
Oh, this car.
before I go into the disorganization pattern, as you're using this experience to learn from,
Yeah.
you're also learning patience
Mm.
and you're learning empathy. So
Hmm.
oftentimes there's multitudes of lessons within our patterns,
Mm.
especially the bigger the pattern, the more common, the more we experience the pattern, there's usually more than one. But there's an underlying theme that runs through these. And so there's always opportunities to learn and grow.
Yeah.
And when we can really look at these things just by looking at, listening to what you're saying and then looking at it from that kind of that objective place, it's like, yeah. So now you're like, you go from, I just got to get out of here to now I'm at the back of the line if I need to be. And you're already thinking about the kid or the guy or whatever, and you're empathizing already. Right.
Yeah.
So you're in your higher self. You're in your lighter
Yeah.
self.
Yeah. And that was before I don't have my driver's license and they won't give me
Yeah.
a loaner. So even when that happened, I'm like, yep.
Yeah. So let's go into the disorganization pattern.
Okay.
Okay.
Why
So
not, Lisa?
I,
Why
yeah,
not?
why not? So now this is actually, um, uh, it can show up a multitude of ways, but this is how I have it laid out. It starts where we accumulate things gradually. So this is more about things like in the home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not so much a scattered pattern, where that, because that's a whole nother pattern that you're describing, forgetful pattern, that kind of thing. So that kind of links into that things. But what I'm going to describe now is more of a disorganization pattern that I used to have.
Mm.
strongly. So you start where you're in your house and things start to accumulate, right? You maybe the mail piles up on the counter, and then it just stays there. And then the next pile of mail and the next pile of mail, or whatever it is, right? So then you say to yourself, you'll get to it later. That's the next step. And then you don't get to it later. Now things have really been piling up. So
Mm.
that's the pilot's license, right? The pilot's license.
Mhm.
Things start to pile up. Now this could be clothes, it could be papers, it could be dishes, right? I mean, I know people who have all sorts of dishes around their computer. Eric used to
Oh,
collect
that drives
water
me
bottles.
nuts.
Yeah, Eric had water bottles, right?
Oh,
And that would drive
drives.
me nuts
Oh,
too.
Eric and the water bottles.
Eric and the water bottles.
Ah.
Yeah. So that's a similar, right? So it can be anything, not just the paper and stuff.
Yeah.
But paper is definitely where a lot of it happened for me. Then you can't find something, right? And you just saw it the other day,
Mm.
right? You come across it, and now you need it and you can't find it. So now the emotion comes. Frustration. Where is that thing? I just saw it. I'm sure
That's
everyone can
never
relate.
happened to. I feel like this happens to me on. Usually, it's with my phone or my car
Yep.
keys.
Yep.
Where are my keys and where's my phone?
Yep. So then you have to go through everything in order to find the thing that you're looking for. Again, how much time gets wasted in all of this disorganization? So much time gets wasted.
Mhm.
So much frustration builds.
Mhm.
Then you figure you might as well start organizing things as you go through them. So what I used to do, I don't have it in here, but what I used to do is put everything in a box. You know those great boxes you get from
Yeah.
Office Depot, right?
Yeah.
Fold them out. I have so many in the garage.
File box. They're file boxes, but I know.
They're file
Yeah.
boxes. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're everything and anything boxes for a lot of people.
Mhm.
And so what I would do is like companies coming over or whatever, it's like, just throw it all, just take the counter and just put it all in a box or whatever, and throw stuff in a box, and then it goes put in another room, and then you'll again get to it later.
Mhm.
Of course, you don't get to it later. And then there's bills in the box that you don't pay, or there's whatever, I mean, it can
Mhm.
be all sorts of stuff that happens. So then those are some of the things that maybe you have to go through in order to find what it is you're looking for. So now I can't tell you how many times I would go through boxes. I think digitally, it happens more now digitally for people too, trying to find that thing. So now we have digital disorganization. Okay.
Somewhere along the way, and it might have been you. Digital disorganization. I created email file folders for everything important,
Yeah.
and everybody's got a file. So because and I'm just gonna throw my friend Terry out there.
Yep.
Only this happened years and years and years ago.
Yep.
When we were working intimately together. So maybe 2015, 2016. And I'd look at her phone and she'd have like 26,000 emails. And like, if I see an unopened text message, gives me anxiety. I
Oh,
mean, I can't handle emails, text messages, right? So like Alan's phone has 80 something text messages that are, I don't even go there. I can't even do it. But yes, digital disorganization. So if that happens to be you, the biggest tip that I can give you is create email boxes. Like Lisa, you got your own email box. Actually, you have two.
nice.
Yeah. I mean, Jason has a box. And then every single one of my company emails, any one of my builders, they have their own box. So digital disorganization. But
Yeah.
we're not talking about my organization. We're talking about disorganization.
Disorganization. So for yours is a little scattered, but to kind of finish out this pattern. So while you're going through your stuff, which is already disorganized, you're like, well, while I'm going through this, I might as well start getting organized. So then you start to organize it. So again, I'm coming from complete experience on this. So I would start putting my piles, my big pile, into smaller piles and get them organized. A lot of it was paper. I was a big paper disorganized person. Now I'm more of a digital one. But no, I've actually gotten a lot better at that. Good Lord, I've got so many backup drives, and I'm trying to condense things because I duplicate a lot of stuff too. Anyway, um, so then you are putting smaller piles and you're organizing, and then you find the thing that you're looking for, and guess what happens to all those little piles? You pile them all on top of each other and you put it
Yeah,
back
you
in the
tag it,
box.
you tag it, you tag it. I have it right
And
here.
you're like, I'll get
Kind of like
to
this.
it later.
You put them in a pile, but they're all
Yeah.
kind of.
Yes. And then you get to, and then you just, okay, I found my thing. I got my relief.
Yes.
And then it just all goes back in the box to be dealt with later.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, how many years I did this. I mean, I have found this was really interesting because when I started to get a handle on this, um, gosh, it was way back. I was in the house in Summerlin, so I don't know how far back that is. Quite a while, a decade, over a decade, definitely. And I found an 8,000. No, this was back in my apartment. $8,000 refund check from the IRS that was in one of my boxes. Okay. $8,000. Yeah. So this was probably 18 years ago,
How long was it
19
missing?
years ago. Yeah.
How long was it missing?
Well, I didn't even know it was in there.
Oh, Jesus.
And that's when I was struggling with money.
Did it
So,
clear?
well, yes. Oh, yeah, it did.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know how long it was in there. Obviously, it cleared. Yes.
Okay.
But that's the thing. So here I'm struggling with money. So here's just, again, these things overlap. Here I am struggling with money at that time, and it was there all along. It was there all along. So self-sabotage, right? I have left my card. This was back then, during that time, my bank card in the teller machine or the bank card machine, right? Another self-sabotage. So then I lose my bank card. Of course, they pull it in after a while, right? It pulls in after a while, and then you lose it, and you got to order another one again. More time, more like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then so I was thinking then the next time, that was back when I was in Summerlin. So I don't know, this was probably 15 years ago, right? So this is when I was getting a handle on my disorganization.
Mm.
And I was also putting off my taxes
Mm.
at that time because now I'm in business and doing my own stuff. And I started to organize. So I took all of my boxes. I brought all my boxes out because my bedroom looked like a storage area. I mean,
Oh,
it was
dear.
bad. I was bad.
Really?
Yeah. It looked
I've
like a storage
seen
area.
your house. I
Yeah.
know I can't even imagine that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I was pulled out all my boxes. I had like maybe 3 years of taxes to get caught up on. It was crazy. But I was afraid I was going to owe money, right? Anyway, so I got stuff out, and then I found I think $100 check. But this is the coolest thing. As I was doing this that day, it took me about, I don't know how long it took, but I was 4 hours in, and at that time I wasn't even a life coach yet, so that must have been
18 years ago.
yeah. So gosh, yeah,
Yeah.
I've been doing it 18 years, so it was maybe I was, I don't know, but it was long
Early on.
ago.
Yeah. Right.
And because I was still doing website design, that's why I'm like, was I a life coach back then? But I was doing website design back then, and I had an outstanding invoice for like $5,000, and I wasn't even sure if I was going to get it. While I was organizing, that company called me with payment for $5,000. Crazy. And
Crazy.
then after I did all my taxes that I was so afraid I was going to owe money on, I don't know, I got about, I think it was like $4,000 back from the IRS. So see, my money patterns, my money self-sabotage
Yeah.
was actually overlapping with my disorganization and procrastination pattern. We all know the procrastination pattern.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So these patterns, they overlap, and they're self-sabotaging.
Yes.
And we're doing it to ourselves. And that's what's
Yes.
really important to understand. So anyway, so I wanted to share that because I wasn't planning on talking about all that. But yes, that came up.
No,
that yeah.
Who hasn't related to that? Although you ended up, so there was, again, there were a lot of patterns, overlapping in that very important scenario, because it had to do with money, and it had to do with organization, and it had to do with procrastination and all those things. I can't even imagine your house with stacked boxes like that. If I saw that, I'd be like, Lisa, we got to talk.
Yeah.
You need a process.
I took pictures of it. And part of what inspired me is I was at a Harry Potter book launch or something launch. And I took Eric. Eric was just, I don't know how old he was. He was young. He's 27 now. And I took him to this Harry Potter event. And I'm looking in, obviously, the self-help section of the Barnes and Noble, I think it was. And I was looking for organization. And they said, take a picture before and after. So I actually took a picture. I have no idea where the picture is. It's digital,
Right.
but ultimately, that was very beneficial. I took a before picture and then it somehow inspired me. So if you're a disorganized person, that might be something to think about, is take a picture, take a before and after as a way to maybe inspire you to move in a more organized fashion. So now here's another thing about the disorganization pattern. So what's the lesson encoded in all this? Right? Well, if we again use the law of reflection, disorganized on the outside is a reflection of what's disorganized on the inside. So I had a lot of things I needed clarity on about myself. I didn't understand about myself. It was disorganized. It was sometimes chaotic and so forth. So my outer world reflected what was going on in my inner world. And as we grow, obviously we get more clarity, we get more organized internally. And therefore it shows up on our outside world.
Yep. So true. I've dealt with all of it. So we're now going through our house and it's going to sell pretty soon. I can feel it in my bones. And all of the memories of the move from Vegas to here. Yeah. And some of the stuff I brought with me, I'm like, oh, what a waste. Why do I still have this? Like, there's an absolute, in my house I'm an organized person. I'll go through my Tupperware drawers, and if I find one without a lid or the lid's cracked, the whole thing goes in the garbage. Like, I can't even handle the Tupperware drawer. Yeah. Which doesn't everybody have a really messy Tupperware? So anyway, mine's clean. But everybody, because as time goes by, life starts to pile on top of itself. And if you don't stay on top of it, and this is everybody's life. So I would imagine that there's a lot of our listeners, and it'd be funny to hear in the chat feature, how many people are I think, I don't know, everybody's got to deal with this at some level.
And then it leads to overwhelm, and it leads to stress. Again, consequences to our, how we are within our lives.
Yep.
So, but the whole thing about the pearl, why I thought of pearls, because it's pearls of wisdom, right? You become wiser as you not only learn the lesson, and here's when you're learning the lesson. First, you got to identify what the lesson is. How, you have to awareness on what the lesson actually is. And that takes some time for some of these patterns and the particular person who's in the pattern. But ultimately, you not just see the lesson, you got to learn the lesson, then you got to master the lesson, then you become wiser. So I had somebody share with me a poem this morning. It's a short poem around wisdom, and I loved it because it fits into what we're talking about today with pearls of wisdom, right? So here's the poem.
It's beautiful.
Wisdom is not loud, nor does it whisper. It is a resonance that realigns you with a better decision. It is a knowing that arises with undeniable clarity. It is an expansion that makes the mind lighter. Wisdom is gradual, often showing you the same truth, but from different angles, until finally it clicks so deeply that it becomes part of your being. As the wisdom within you matures, it becomes easier to let go, to stop fighting yourself, and to move with nature instead of against it. And the author is Yung Pueblo. Hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yung Pueblo. Sounds like a mix of cultures.
Yes. It does. Yes. It does.
Beautiful.
So yeah, and it is a gradual thing. And part of the patterns, breaking through patterns, this is not just a flip of the switch, right? You're going to catch your patterns sometimes after the fact. But but what you want to do is you want to progress. If you catch it 90% of the way in and you reroute, awesome. If you then moves to 75% and then you reroute because you're catching it at 75% in the pattern, awesome. 50%, 40%, 30% until you're like, oh, I recognize that first step. I recognize my beginning. I am not going to go there.
Mm.
And you'll be tested because it's a lesson. You'll be tested. So when you're doing this, recognize that, because some of the stuff is so automatic that we just don't see it coming until we're in the middle.
Yep. And we're here kind of sharing with everybody what's actually happening, and it actually is happening. What is it that's happening? This grand shift of consciousness is absolutely happening, and it's giving us just a really unique opportunity to be a little more reflective, aware, understanding all of what all of this even means, enough that you can catch it and not rip the inspection guy little young kid's head off, and that really truly sometimes when we get that relief at the other end, it hurts.
Well, here's the thing. Yeah. So the relief, as you have, we've talked about, is temporary relief.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're out of the pattern, there's nothing to be relieved from.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Boom.
Like, where are my fireworks now?
So.
That's right. Exactly. Once you break it, that's the freedom. And that's the power piece, that when we operate from that space of authentic power, you are confident, you're strong, you're certain, you're good. And you're not riddled with all of this, why won't she be my friend, he be my friend, right? There's freedom at the other end.
There is.
Yeah.
Very good.
Any other beautiful components to
I think that was a good one to end on.
That was a good one to end on. All right, y'all. Well, thanks again. Like, subscribe, and share if you are so inclined. Thank you, Lisa, for another really fun hour.
Thank you, Sondra.
Okay.